What is up, everybody?
Oh, hey, he's starting it this time. I was actually so freaking ready. You were just faster, I
I'm
suppose.
hyped, dude. I'm hyped today.
You're hyped today.
I'm so hyped.
All right, what's got you hyped? What's got you going here today?
Okay, so I just went out for a walk.
Yeah, you were late because of it.
It's such a pretty day out.
Mm-hmm.
It feels like the world just breathes its life force inside of me.
Yeah, I'm kind of feeling the same too because it is no longer 30 to 40 degrees. The other day it reached 85 as the high in Chicago here, and I thought I was...
You're coughing. There's
Grew
no
up in
pollen,
Texas
though.
There's always pollen.
Yeah, for those who don't know, Braxton there is deathly allergic. Not really, but...
Well, I haven't died yet. But we may find out. Though, for Texas, I haven't lived there in a year, but I already hate anything that's over like 80 degrees.
I'm with you. I've lived here forever.
It's quite sad. Very
hurts.
sad. It does hurt. It makes me sweat, and pollen is terrible. But apparently, the heat and humidity is good for getting rid of this pandemic, so I welcome it.
Hopefully.
Yeah, hopefully. And some places are starting to open up quite controversially.
Yeah, Texas has opened up.
Well,
slowly.
How do you feel about that?
Well, I feel good, Braxton, and this will be the first time I'm going to mention it anywhere. So this is breaking news. All right. Hopefully my players are not listening to this podcast. Maybe they are. I hope they are. Get more views. But I don't have a bedroom, listeners. I do not have a bedroom.
Oh, did you?
I bought a mattress today.
I
did it.
Yeah.
We've been playing in my old bedroom. So I have now been setting up a new location for us to play in my apartment.
What?
Yeah, I haven't told anybody. So they're gonna come over and be like, "What is this?"
Are we gonna?
It's gonna be easy. It's gonna be much easier for me to move things now.
Who knows when that's gonna happen next, though?
Yeah, I know.
Well, I'm curious now. Is it in the same room, or are you sleeping in that room?
No, it's going to be in my computer room, podcast room where I am right now. I'm just going to flip around one of the monitors. That's where Braxton's head's going to be.
What?
Yeah. I'm going to move over my camera so the table fits in here. So it's going to be slightly cramped, but everything else is going to be fine, I think.
Sorry, are you going to use your PC to DM?
Mm-hmm. No. Your head's going to be where my PC is. I'm going to sit at the far end.
Okay.
Yeah, I thought about using my PC, but there's too much. I like having only like one screen in front of me when I play.
Yeah,
so it's,
and you just bought that tablet laptop thing, so you might as well use it.
Yeah, I use it for other stuff too anyway, so it's nice to have a second use for it.
Yeah, for sure. We've been getting closer to having D&D come back into our lives. I've been DMing occasionally for my group, but...
Yeah, how's that been going, huh?
We haven't done it this week, but the last session they were like floored with how I was juggling a lot of stuff there. Currently, because of my terrible planning in like two separate versions of a place right now at the same time, like I'm not going to describe it at all because they may be listening. I don't want to give them any clues, but they're in two separate like versions of a place. And like combat's going on in one area and something else is happening in another. And the other group is in this prison. It's the beginning of a dungeon. And they could probably assume that dungeon's also in the other world. And there's like 6 of them, so they're each in pods of 2 interacting with other shit. I'm giving side quests to one group, and they were telling me that it was really interesting because as a player, they were like, oh, hell, I want to help with that side quest. So it got them interested, even though a different player received the side quest.
That's cool.
Kind of how I was managing to keep everybody interested. But really, it was just me juggling like 40 balls and dropping half of them, but putting new ones in.
Yeah.
So it's probably plot holes.
As a DM, how much do you enjoy withholding information from your players? Like, you know what's happening, but they don't, and you get to watch them freak out over everything they don't know.
Me. I want to tell them all the time, but I'm sure at some point at the end of this, I'll finally get to reveal the big thing, and they'll be excited about it. So
it's fun. It's fun stretching over some big reveal and hoping it doesn't flop.
Yeah, and I've been working on a little artsy stuff for the thing. You know, DM's always like, I'll have the map next time, and then they never do.
Yeah, but
it's taken me some time, but they don't need it yet. We're getting there, getting close. Well, I mean, what about you though? Have you been writing stuff for
a little bit? A little bit here and there. I mean, I have some reveals, some things that are I've been planning for months and years, waiting underneath the surface. I just can't wait for them to slowly come out. I think that's the DM's conundrum is having these cool moments that you have planned and hope that they come to fruition at some point, but not revealing all your cards at once.
Yeah.
You want to be like, this is it, check it out.
And then they go, I'm going to go that way.
Yeah, then it's not as fun.
It's true. That's the risk reward, man. That's the adrenaline. It gets you pumping. I hope you're speaking about stuff that may be revealed for my character. We talked about that.
Nah.
No?
Nah.
You know me. I need my limelight.
Nah.
It's all about me. I am the most important.
Nope.
You trying to say that I am not the coolest character in 5e ever?
No. I'm gonna be honest. Your characters are generic, stupid, idiotic. You know what? I'm gonna say it. I'm saying it. A waste of space.
You want to take this outside?
Sure, dude.
Roll your frickin' initiative, Ryan.
I'm getting up.
We'll sit back down and get your dice. Roll initiative.
Sorry, we're
going to talk about combat today.
Oh, sick.
Yeah, finally.
It's perfect. Yeah, thank goodness. We've only been talking about it for months on end.
Sorry if I destroyed everybody's ears there. We're just excited, hence Ryan's outburst at the beginning of the episode. Sorry. This might even be a two-parter.
Do you stitch 2 parts?
Yeah.
That's unheard of.
Depends on how much we talk about here today.
Yeah.
I wrote a lot of notes this time.
Oh my God.
Don't know if I'm going to read them.
I didn't write too many.
Really?
Yeah, because I got it all in my head.
Well,
I'm always thinking about how stupid and terrible. No, ways for it to be improved.
Yeah, it's
bare bones for a reason.
It is bare bones, and we can talk about what 5e serves, what purpose it serves compared to the other tabletop games and whatnot. But generally, it's an entry point for a lot of people, as it has been recently in the past 3 or so years. Because of other things like Critical Role, blah blah blah.
I mean,
it's a great thing to get into.
Yeah, it did what it was supposed to do. 5th edition, 3rd edition, and 4th edition. It had some people liked it, whatever. Some people didn't like some editions, yada. And 5th edition has its naysayers as well. But I think the whole point of 5th edition was to get as many people interested in Dungeons and Dragons as possible, and they've definitely succeeded with that.
Yeah, but now those people are becoming masters of a simple system and wanting more from it.
And it's only so deep.
It's about as deep as a puddle that... No, it's like you think there's going to be another step when you're going down the stairs, and then you have that ghost step, and you slam your foot into the ground because there's not another one, Or you're going... That kind of feel.
So you're describing Skyrim.
Speaking of Skyrim, I actually re-downloaded Skyrim VR, and I'm about to put my...
I think that could actually be kind of interesting.
I might do it. It's going to take a bit. I mean, there's a whole mod pack install thing that we'll bring into. But, combat in D&D definitely isn't a virtual reality experience where you're fighting toe-to-toe with a dragon spewing fire in your face, although it's a dumb dragon.
That would be cool.
It would be cool. But I guess we should start in general with... What is combat in 5e? How does it work?
And what's its purpose?
Yeah, what do you, as a DM who's played a bit longer and created games a bit more than I have, what is combat in D&D 5e for you? What do you use it as what's purpose does it serve?
So and everyone's a little bit different.
Yeah.
For me, D&D, I've talked about this, probably our first episode and probably many times since. D&D to me is a way to tell really cool stories. So to me, the RP and the role-playing and the story aspect is in the forefront. So I try to at least make every combat encounter integral and important in some way. If I do have random encounters, there is something that is, not technically random about it. It is serving a grander purpose. While other people might make combat. Just some people just love fighting things. They love having their big axe slam into a little goblin's head, watching the blood pool out onto the ground. That gets their rocks off.
I got a lot of players like that, but
Yeah,
they
and
end up
that's
liking the
okay.
story parts too.
Yeah, and that to me is like the best. That's the type of players you want. Someone that likes both aspects.
Yeah.
So this goes
5e because it's very focused on RP.
Yeah, it goes back to session 0. Make sure you know what the players are looking for. If they're looking for just a good old dungeon crawl with lots of combat, then make sure you make the combat interesting, which is kind of what we're going to be talking about today. Is how do you, if you're just going to have a bunch of combat, how do you keep your players interested and not just, okay, I move over there, I attack that guy. That guy moves over to you, he attacks you back. Oh, your AC's not, okay, he doesn't hit your AC, all right, now it's your turn. Back and forth, that's boring.
What it feels like to me, the best way to describe it is you play Magic the Gathering.
Uh-huh.
All of 5e combat is like playing against a blue player.
Countered.
All of it. Not even with like counterspell.
A return
There's
to your
just
hand?
so much stopping and loss of momentum.
Yeah.
Because either people are learning and that's not their fault, or there's not a mechanic for this thing because the game is so simple and you have to argue or discuss peacefully a way to bring it in. you know?
The peaceful part is very important. You don't want to dissolve into yelling at each other.
You don't want to go into real world combat.
No.
That would be bad, which I'm sure it's happened.
Yeah,
but
D&D's not made for that.
No. For 5e, I guess, to talk about combat and how it's structured, feel free to fill any holes if I miss something here, but you start off with something, combat happening, an encounter, a fight breaks out. You roll for initiative. The higher you roll, the more soon you go in the turn-based combat of D&D.
Sure.
You have several things you can do during the turn. The biggest thing being your action. So when it's your turn, that's where you cast your fun spells that say these take an action to do, or you attack with a weapon, etc. Anything that says it takes action, you do it. Or you can use your action to do a pretty in-depth perception check, investigation, say a longer sentence. And do keep in mind your turn is about 6 seconds. So always try to remember that the more you're trying to cram in, your DM will keep that in mind. You have a bonus action. This is for smaller things like chugging a potion, slapping your friend's butt. Maybe not that one. That's not in the game. You could.
I would argue that's just your interaction.
Yeah. Speaking of which, good segue. Maybe if you can't do that, your bonus action, you go, well, DM, I know I have an interaction because I studied combat.
I would like to slap their ass as a interaction.
Yeah, he killed the guy, did really good. Give him a little butt
Well
pat. Well played. And you've got a reaction, which uses itself on not your turn.
Yeah, so
now,
preventing it from being Hearthstone.
Words. It's kind of like something that you can do based off of a thing that happens. It's in the name. It's a reaction. You can also ready a spell, and if you have a reaction open or an
attack,
you can release it.
Yeah.
Am I missing something?
Well, you generally only get one reaction unless otherwise stated by something else.
Per round.
Yes, until your turn comes up again.
Correct. And you have movement, of course, and that depends on who you are, what you are, how many legs you got,
what
how
you're wearing,
wings are, what you're wearing, you know? But generally, people have 30 feet of movement. You could also take a dash, which that's getting into a bunch of other actions that we'll talk about that you can take.
Not keeping in mind difficult terrain, which uses half your movement. Being prone, getting up. There's lots of things that... So what we just described, if you're a new player, may sound complicated, but it boils down to not much at a time.
Yeah, and a lot of you who have been playing for a bit, maybe you've had 1 or 2 campaigns and you've got maybe like 100 hours of D&D under your belt, you may be like, honestly, I don't even know I could slap my friend's butt as a reaction. All I've ever done is cast Eldritch Blast and move like 5 feet away. Well, friend, you've got a lot more tools at your disposal that I think Ryan and I will discuss that can make combat a little bit more fun.
A lot of ass slapping, abilities are in here.
Oh yeah, whether it's your buddies or you're kicking.
Make
the ass
sure
of your
make
enemy.
sure it is consensual between friends.
Yes.
Don't
So
just go slapping people's asses.
Ryan, do you think that most players know about all of those basic things that they can do during their turn?
I would say most of that possibly, except for I'm pretty sure at least some of our players did not know about holding actions until we mentioned it to them.
Yeah, or the interaction itself. I didn't even know that was a
Yes,
thing.
yeah. Like, so
It was for sure
holding an
something.
action doesn't really come up unless, for example, someone has cast a darkness spell, you can't see inside of it, and so you can't really attack anybody because you don't know where they are. So you decide to hold your action to when the person comes out of the darkness.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you just waste a turn by doing nothing. Or if something's going invisible and coming back out of the ethereal plane, whatever. That's really where the hold action ability is important.
Yeah, so there's a lot of ways to use those simple few tools at your disposal, because a lot of D&D can seem like shitting out your spell or your attack and then
Yeah.
waiting for a long amount of time. Now, like, it sucks if the combat that's going on isn't something you're interested in, because then really you're not invested in everything else that's happening. If you're in a group like mine or our friend Kenneth's, who's been on the podcast before, there's about 6 people in your group and combat can take a while. And when it's not your turn and you've got that spell you want to cast and it's finally up to you, you cast it and you end up getting counterspelled.
Or just don't hit the DC.
Yeah, it gets really, really boring.
Like, all right, well, now you wait another half hour until my turn comes up.
Yeah, so is there a solution to this?
I'm pretty sure you've asked me this exact question before in the podcast, and I think my answer was no, not really. What you can't do is you can put down a timer, say, you have X amount of time to take your turn. If it ends and you have not done anything, then your turn is over. You've since foregone your turn because you took too long. This is 6 seconds of a whole initiative. You're done. We've moved on.
You only have 6 seconds to do your turn, actually.
That would be unbelievably stressful.
I guess if there's no solution on that end, then let's tackle it from the other side. Can the DM make it more fun to lose your action? I know that sounds like a dumb thing to ask, but is there a way to make
I'd say
combat itself more fun?
I think just making, as a blanket statement, making combat more interesting. Yeah, so if you were to fail your turn, you can think, okay, well, how can I react to me failing this and respond in a way that is productive? Or
you have other things to do.
Yeah, or be stressed. Now, okay, and normally if it fails, it's like, gotta wait now. You're not stressed, nervous, or planning your next move. You're like, okay, well now I just gotta wait again. You're upset.
Yeah.
There are ways that you can make it interesting enough where the person is now, oh shit, we might die now. I gotta figure out how we gotta get out of this situation that we're in.
Yeah.
If it's just they take turns, you take turns, no, bored.
It gets boring. The problem I encounter right now when trying to tackle this is I have a lot of things that I want to discuss. Other systems and games, how that's trained D&D players now to be impatient. I think probably starting there. If you think about something like Fire Emblem, I was in love with combat with that. It's fairly straightforward. Move several units that you own. You as one player are the commander that tells everybody where to go and how to attack. Most enemies die in 1 to 2 hits if you're playing in a way where you're being really efficient with rock, paper, scissors. D&D is a bit more complicated.
So can you as well.
Yes. The problem with Fire Emblem and trying to translate it to D&D is there's a lot of death mitigation. And what I mean by that is you, spoilers, at some point are able to take your turns back or redo an action.
Yeah.
Also, something else is that when you die, you're able to also use that and wind back time. Now, the biggest point about this game is that it's single player. You're always up. It's always your turn unless you're watching the CPU go, and you can even then make the move faster.
Yeah.
You're always in the action. So I'd say, even though I really wanted to try to find a way to make Fire Emblem into D&D or just translate it in some way, make it more fun, because I really enjoyed the strategy behind it. But ultimately I ended up saying that the only thing you could bring over is how important movement is in Fire Emblem.
Sure.
And I kind of wanted to talk to you about that a little bit more, Ryan, because I think movement is underutilized and it can go into a lot of other things. So, what do you think the purpose of movement is in D&D?
Typically,
combat.
Just getting closer to the enemy.
Okay.
I mean, I'd say that's just the blanket. That's what it's generally used for. Is just getting close to the enemy, or if you're the caster, farther away, / making sure you're in range to cast your spell. That's generally what I'd see it being used for.
See, and that leads you to focus on everything's happening at the action.
Mm-hmm.
It all funnels back into that. Now, I know something you are a huge, huge proponent or proprietor of, something that you like doing, is making the environment more engaging and related to the enemy or whatever's going on.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. That way it adds more to the player's front, gives them more options and things to think about, but also helps you understand the enemy a little better, gives you some background to them.
Yeah. So I think we recently had a fight. There's the last session that we had where I had a lot of confidence going into it because from our point of view, it was a door and maybe they'd be able to shoot us down as we walked in, but nothing was going to happen until we went in there. So we had a lot of time to figure it out. And then eventually we opened it up, ran in, and it's us having the high ground and there was a wide open space. And eventually we pulled them back, funneled them through the door and turned it around. So it was giving me a sort of bigger goal to achieve towards. And this is something that Day 9 talks about a lot in a lot of his streams. So if you don't know Day 9, I think we've mentioned him before, big StarCraft player, but now he just streams variety video games, a lot of Magic the Gathering. And he talks about how goals in video games or tabletop RPGs are really important. And I would argue as a DM, trying to implant goals that your players can pick up will make it a lot more fun than their default goal being to deal damage or shoot this fun spell out. They've got stuff they're learning and they want to use it.
I think every combat encounter should have some overall goal other than just killing everybody. Maybe not every, but the majority. If you want to keep it super interesting, I think that's something else you would take from Fire Emblem is that some of the quests are more intricate than just kill everybody on the board. Yeah. You have to go here, pull this lever, and then you can start seeing, or maybe you're fighting too many enemies and you just gotta survive until you can get past this doorway or something. Have to escape. So you could bring that into D&D very easily.
Absolutely. Very, very easily. And the environment is a great way to interact with that, for sure. Yeah. So what I mean is bringing that main goal that you've got, putting that there so everybody's got that sort of teamwork. So even if their turn ends, they're like, okay, I know what I need to do next. And it keeps their mind active. So I think that's the biggest thing to do. But going back to movement, Ryan, I really want to hear your opinion on this. So yes or no, does every action that does damage have a distance on it? A range that it works?
How do you mean?
Every spell or attack that you have, doesn't it say 5 feet?
Yeah, right.
10 feet, 100,000 feet, something like that?
Sure.
Why does it feel like that's almost never relevant outside of 20 feet or so? Or cone spells? Like I feel...
Because I would say most encounters are in smaller rooms.
I think using more space could be a good idea.
Wide open encounters. Or fortresses where there's multiple layers.
Yeah, that would be a good thing too. Because if you watched Baldur's Gate 3, one of the first gameplay things, that's pretty much D&D. It's supposed to be, at least, even though it's a little different. There was multiple spaces in this like broken down chapel or cathedral or castle. I don't know what it was. But they had a lot of people fighting on top of different levels. And in Fire Emblem, you're always thinking, I know for a fact this guy can shoot X distance. And if I just get one space away from that, I'm fine. I survive. And that was always such a fun thing in Fire Emblem that I think trying to bring that into D&D could be pretty fun. Now, most everybody can only move 30 feet, so I don't know how much that will hold, Ryan, but what are your thoughts on trying to use movement more to get out of the range of spells?
I think that can be. Well, I think it can be tough. So let's say, for example, if you're a well-versed player and been playing for a long time, and it would be tough to, because you don't know what this caster, what spells they could possibly have until they use it on you.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if you take that knowledge, say, okay, they used lightning bolt on us and just absolutely wrecked us. They hurt us hardcore. Well, that's 100-foot line. Let's say I'm a caster. I know I have this spell in my repertoire. I know how far that spell is. I can tell, maybe even just not a line, or 100 feet. You could say, all right, let's make sure we're not standing in a line. Let's spread out. It'll make this caster harder to hit us. So you can then spread out the movement and get people away from each other. Then as a DM, you could even then take advantage of that. Now they're separated. Let's go attack the caster. Then once you start attacking the caster, then the other players have to figure out, okay, well, we can either stay far apart and avoid this lightning spell, or we can move in to try to protect our caster and possibly get attacked by some big AoE spell. They gotta start weighing some options there. That at least makes the encounter more interesting instead of, all right, just attack the frontline guys over and over again.
Now you could be the biggest dick of the monsters know what they're doing, to quote that book title, or whatever it is.
Website.
But, so you get hit by that straight line spell, and then you guys all spread out, but then they have an AoE that hits you, and then you're like, well, fuck, did that even matter? You could be a dick, but maybe your monster is just really smart.
Braxton brings up a good point there, that some monsters do know what they're doing. If they have encountered this guy, this necromancer, this mad mage of Kavath, multiple times, he's going to know what these guys do, or at least should. As a DM, don't be afraid to take, quote unquote, metagame knowledge, because you've fought these guys before. You know what they can do. Focus down certain guys, figure out what they're weak to, and just abuse that. That'll then make the combat even more interesting, because like, oh my god, this guy is obliterating us. We got to figure out a new tactic.
Oh, that brings up another good point, is communication during a fight.
Yeah, that's tough.
It's tough. Because you can say like a short sentence every turn or so, and even then something else will happen on the other person's turn, and you want to say something, but you can't.
It's tough to not just shout out.
Do you feel like reactions could be used as words?
Yeah, I mean, I'm okay with you guys talking in between combats or in between turns and stuff, as long as it's not like, you should do this, you need to do this, you guys need to do that. You talk it out. It's like you're playing, some cooperative board game together. You can stop the turn for a moment, figure it out, but don't tell them what to do. Figure out what the best course of action is for everybody, and then let them kind of decide it on their own.
Yeah, I guess that's another thing that we kind of should talk about. I mean, you pretty much encompassed it right then and there, but is talking during combat out of game okay? I mean, it's a turn-based game, and of course, you playing Fire Emblem on your own, you could take an hour to make your next turn.
Yeah, I would say it probably depends, right? Depends on the group, the DM, the type of style of gameplay everyone likes to play. It varies.
True. Well, in our group, I guess, since a lot of people are familiar with our more focus on sort of role play, not metagaming, what's your general idea? Like, say Celestia wants to cast darkness. This has happened before, and I don't want to be in darkness, but I went like a few turns ago, and mine's not up next until another part's later. That's a specific case. Like, obviously, he's not going to know Celestia is about to cast darkness.
Yeah. So
maybe that's a bad example. But would I just have to stay shut?
I mean, as long as you guys aren't arguing about it and it doesn't take forever, I'm okay with it. Because, again, you want to win that fun, and if someone gets put in the darkness and didn't want to be there, then like, okay, well, now my character's at a detriment here.
I mean, it's fun as long as nobody dies.
Sure.
All of these actions have good intents.
Well, hopefully. Unless the party member has now turned on everybody.
We'll find out next time on Dragon Ball Z. That's a thing that I forgot to talk about or even take notes on, is communication during combat. I'm sure there's lots of people that have a DM who try to make it as tough as possible, even maybe like Fire Emblem. It's like, if you guys die, you die. Let's take all the time to strategize, mention everything you guys can do, even during combat. Like, that's fine. So I'm sure some people do that.
Well, some people even, they write down you shot 2 arrows last turn. Okay, you either got to pick them up or they're gone. You have to go buy more.
Wow.
Yeah, some people are very precise about that type of stuff.
Well, I guess that kind of leads into another thing I dislike about 5e, and maybe just this in general, are spell slots. And at least maybe as a warlock, it's a bit different for me. But
You're bitter.
man, I have 2 spell slots for the majority of the time that I'll be playing as a warlock. And then when I look at games like Fire Emblem, Valkyrie Chronicles, or Divinity, they have like action points basically. And you can do a certain amount of things a turn. Movement takes action points.
Fire Emblem has spell slots, right? Like you can cast that spell that amount of times this combat.
Yeah, but that's still a lot, though.
It's more than 2, yeah.
It's a lot. And it's still their 1 turn, I think. So maybe Fire Emblem's a bit different. But for Divinity and Valkyria Chronicles specifically, they've got action points or action meter. And for Divinity Original Sin 2 specifically, you get 6 action points a turn, and I think you replenish 2 every time it gets back to you. Your movement takes that much, like I said before, depending on how fast you are, the more mileage you get out of it. Some spells take 2 action points, some take 3. So I kind of enjoy that resource aspect. And I think that could be interesting in D&D if they ever try to change that, because Baldur's Gate, I think that's probably what they're doing. With it's going to be action points. So do you think it would ever be possible to homebrew an action points version of 5e?
Possibly. Yeah, really it'd be tough.
Everything would be out of balance.
Yeah, because it is very much balanced around the spell slot mechanic.
Yeah.
But you can only use this, this big Mac Daddy spell once. Your level, your 9th slot.
Yeah, I think I would like it a lot more if that were the case, because it would put a certain amount of importance on movement, and maybe everything would need to be reorganized around it. But
yeah, because movement's different in Divinity as well, where if you're attacking someone below you, you get extra damage.
Yeah.
While in 5e, it's not.
Baldur's Gate, okay, so that's a bad comparison because it's basically the same game, same engine, same company, same developer. So of course it's got the same system. But I'm interested to see what they do with that, because it's D&D, but it's not faithful to how combat works. Like I couldn't quite tell if initiative was typical or your entire team went when it was your turn. It was weird.
Yeah.
Are there any games that you kind of wish you could take something from and put it into 5e? Combat, at least?
I don't know. I think taking a little bit from everything is a good. The way I get ideas from combat is from quests and stuff in different games and movies and stuff, and things that I find interesting mechanically wise. Because there's not it's tough to take things like the action points. You can't really take that and add it into D&D.
Yeah.
There's things there's things that are central to that game that it's just you can't translate, but the basic idea of that combat you definitely could. Like a lot of my ideas to make things interesting come from finding synergy between creatures, finding ways to change up the terrain in combat, or change up at least the playing field. Maybe more enemies come in from the back or something like that.
Yeah.
You can't really just... It's tough to grab things straight from games.
Give your players more tools, I guess, is a big, title here. If the environment... think of Monster Hunter. You're fighting the Anjanath and you're in the forest. There's that giant boulder that if he goes and is scripted to stand underneath it and you let him there, you can shoot it down and it deals a bunch of damage.
Let's
make it so that the enemies can do it to you, too. Exactly.
That's a great example for... In my DM binder... I have a section called Better Battles, and it's from a group called A Fistful of Dice. They're fantastic. They have 3 tables on here. One that says encounter terrain, one that's encounter features, and one that says encounter events. And the majority of these are D20. The last one is a D100. So for encounter terrain, these are just examples for things for different terrains that people could fight in. For example, floor covered with thick ice, so people maybe are sliding around. That's difficult terrain. Mossy, earthy flooring. Sorry. Platforms of varying heights, like we talked about earlier. That's just semi-interesting, just kind of making the terrain interesting. But then you got the encounter features. So we have a swinging bladed pendulum for one of them. So initiative 20, maybe this pendulum is moving, so you have to make sure you see, okay, that's where it moved last time. It's probably going to come back here, so I need to make sure I'm out of this general vicinity. You'd have crumbling stone pillars, large hanging glass chandelier, and like Braxton said, maybe someone could shoot this chandelier and have it crash on top of everybody. You just have to make sure you make that obvious that this is hanging above the party at all times that someone could attack with.
So that's something that I kind of want to talk about too, and feel free to bring in mechanics that a lot of people don't know about into what I'm about to say, like grappling or shoving. Mm-hmm. How do you teach your players to learn these things? What's your method to? Is it just storytelling through like what you're painting with your word picture? Because the most important thing that I've learned when trying to teach somebody as I've gotten older and I've had to do it more is having them do it on their own is always better, even if giving them the answer is the easy route.
Yeah.
For like a video game that you really want somebody to play. If they start playing it and you're watching them and you're being a backseat gamer saying, oh, this is the best thing, that's the best thing, this is what you need to do here. The reason you're wanting to tell them is because you were so excited and proud of yourself when you found those things out that you want to share that with them.
But now you're taking it away from them.
You're taking, yeah, exactly. So great point there. So how do you do this in D&D with those things that they don't know about?
I think
yet?
Have the enemies do it to them. Give them an example, and the tough thing being making sure the players are aware that that's just not a feature of this enemy, that it's just a feature of D&D. For example, like the holding action stuff, I did that on you guys whenever darkness was cast on in one battle. Darkness was cast on all of you guys, and it like turned the tide of the battle. No one could get a good attack in until I just had all the enemies just stand back and hold their actions until you guys stepped out. And then you're like, oh, I didn't even know. I remember one of the players like, I didn't know that was a thing. Well, now you know.
Mm-hmm. That's exactly what I wanted you to say.
Give them the example.
Do it, two of them. Yeah.
And they're like, wait, they can do that? What? You can too.
Yeah, Kenneth and I were talking, and he was like, have an enemy climb all over a wall to let people remember they have a climbing speed, or dive into the water. There's a lot of tools that they've got. Let them get shoved by something. Learn through failure and pain.
One of the biggest things you can do to make, say it's a normal, everyday combat encounter in a dungeon with regular old monsters, they're not the most interesting, and combat's dragging on, and everyone's looking bored. This final table that I have on this Better Battle sheet is an encounter events, and this can change the entirety of the encounter, having the room begin to collapse, gravity reverses, there's an earthquake, a huge chasm opens in the middle, separating party members. Just all sorts of enemy reinforcements arrive that's less interesting, or enemies begin polymorphing into different creatures. There's a magical effect happening where you have a boss encounter, and this takes place in some D&D modules, but let's say it's hags, and they have a cauldron.
Oh,
this cauldron is giving them extra abilities, extra powers. Make it obvious that this hag keeps walking over to this cauldron and allowing them to attack and use different spells. So make it a point to attack this cauldron. If you destroy it, this hinders these hags.
I'll make this real simple. Think about anime. Okay? Picture it. Give me an anime that has fights in it, Ryan.
I'm thinking of Evangelion.
Okay, yeah. So what's the general process? An angel shows up.
Yeah, it's a
you
big
gotta
alien.
figure out what the fuck it does.
Yeah, you gotta figure out what it's doing. That's true.
What's its goal? What is it doing? Why is it so damn strong? I just hit it. Nothing's happening.
Nothing's going on.
It's invincible.
It's digging straight to the Earth's core.
Oh, God. So you've got a bunch of things that you want to give your players to figure out rather than here are some dogs running at you.
Kill them.
Kill them.
Kill them before they kill you.
Kill them before they. That's dumb. That's boring. Do it a couple times. Maybe you haven't done it in a while, but it's like, there's an enemy stand, and then you got to spend 3 episodes trying to figure out what the hell it does.
Well, that's Strahd.
Yeah,
an enemy that keeps attacking every so often and is doing things that the player, especially because you start Curse of Strahd at level 1, and he meets you at he can. I decided to have him meet you guys at like level, right at the beginning of the encounter stuff. And he doesn't really attack. He just shows you how cool he is, basically. And the player's like, oh my god, this guy's badass.
What a jerk.
Yeah.
Hate that guy.
Let's say you really like normal encounters.
Okay.
We'll just say like the goal is kill them before they kill you. Okay. Plain and simple. I know we just kind of crapped all over those type of ideas, but let's say that's something you really enjoy. Then that's when you want to find monsters that synergize well together. That's how you keep it interesting. For example, one that I've heard of before. Yeah,
monsters in one.
But one I've heard before and I've thought about, but I've never used because I've never felt like it's applicable. But a clay golem and a gelatinous cube. Okay? Now follow me for a moment.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say it's in a dungeon, and you can make it make sense. It's in a dungeon. There's a gelatinous cube roaming around. The golem was built by whoever built the dungeon. Okay? Simple enough. Clay golems are immune to acid. They also have a feature called acid absorption, where they heal from this acid damage.
No, stop.
The gelatinous cube happens to deal a lot of acid damage every round if you are engulfed.
No.
The clay golem would be engulfed because they are large. So
stop.
The golem is inside of this cube, roaming around with it, can attack. The only difference being the cube cannot attack with, cannot consume anybody else. And the golem is healed 3d6 damage on initial engulfment. And every turn after, they're healed an additional 66 damage. So, again, make it obvious that this thing is just healing like crazy while it's inside. Have it leave every so often and step back in, and the players realize, oh my god, this thing is healing by this cube. So then they make the cube the priority, kill the cube, then kill the golem.
They're just making smaller cubes.
Well.
See? I hate it. I'm going to use it.
Synergy. There's lots of creatures that have crazy. You just got to really start thinking outside the box. Do some looking things up. Just roam around in the monster manual.
I know I get overwhelmed because I'm already trying to plan a story. So when it comes to combat, I'm like, freaking heck, I got to make a fight right now. Yeah. Okay, throw some monsters in here. Random combat generator, done.
Yeah, kobold generator.
Listen to Ryan here. He's got the good ideas.
It is tough. It is very hard to find these synergies. I mean, even so, do what we did with the Oni a while back in one of our older podcasts. Have a creature that has different abilities and has different things that can combat various works with whatever the terrain is. Give them lair options. Look up some creature you really like, steal its lair encounter, its lair actions, and apply it to a monster that you really like. But depending on the CR, dumb it down if you have to.
Yeah, all in all, D&D is pretty freeform, and no one's going to break down your door. Don't hold me to that if you change something. So ultimately, the solution to boring combat is completely up to you. Just keep in mind how to help people learn. Don't just throw an incredibly hard combat or encounter at them without giving them the tools to overcome it. That's just bad game design.
Give them, you can have traps inside that the players are unaware about. Or I tried. I'm a open behind the curtain here a little bit for Braxton. In the last dungeon that they were in, there was a bunch of Wanty and snake people and lizard folk and whatnot. My initial plan, and they discovered these traps anyway on their own, but my initial plan was to have them fight these snake people, the Wanty, in a certain room, and the snake people were going to leave through one of the connecting hallways, knowing there's a trap there, and pass over and lead them into another room, and hopefully the players would follow them blindly, step into the trap, and be hit, and then continue, and they were going to step into the room where there was it was a pretty big room. And at the far end, the Wanti was going to pull a lever, opening up the chamber and having them all, fall and collapse into this spiked room.
Is this multiple Sin's Fortress or something?
Kind of, yeah, I guess. Multiple traps in kind of pulling them away from each other and making it more interesting. But it ended up, not working because they decided to make a lot of noise. So all the Wanti just kind of attacked in one central area trying to yeah, it was supposed to, it did not work out, but on paper it sounded cool.
So were the things that we were trying to open constantly the traps that you were wanting us to go into?
Where you guys ended up resting for the night was going to be a trap. That you decided to use the trap as a safety mechanism to keep them from being attacked in the middle of the night.
I remember now.
Yeah.
It's been a while. It has been several many weeks. Yeah, we should play this weekend. It's been long enough. So something else I wanted to touch on that Kenneth brought up a lot is class envy.
Shout out.
Do you know at all what I mean about that?
I think I do, but go into more detail if you would.
All right, so I'm stoked, man. I've got this amazing backstory for this fighter human, and he's got a big-ass sword, and I'm going to hit everybody with it. Well, I'm level, 8 now, and everybody can open portals to, different locations and set things on fire with their mind, and I'm still just whacking him with the sword, How can I have more fun?
Well, hopefully the person that decided to choose that class, that's something they enjoy. Hopefully, if you choose a barbarian, you know what you're getting into, right? You know you're going to be smacking people around with your big weapons. That's the idea of the class. Granted, if you don't know much about D&D, you just get into it. You decided, I don't want to be overwhelmed with spells. I'm just going to choose one of the quote-unquote easier classes with the barbarian and fighter, and so I don't have to deal with all these spell slots and whatnot.
Yeah.
And then later you watch, someone cast meteors out of the sky or lightning bolts holding people, and you're like, man, I wish I could do that. My answer as a DM would be to give them a magical item that would benefit them in some way.
It's always a good solution, though.
It's kind of putting a Band-Aid on the problem, of course, but it's still giving them something interesting to do. Or tap into the Unearthed Arcana stuff where they're allowing them to give different, have more options in combat for these guys.
Yeah, often that's a really good solution to fix things, because I often think that reactions should be utilized more. So bringing in magic items that allow them to cast a spell as a reaction, etc., you can plug and play blank, 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 blank as a reaction, like a magic card. But
magic items are always fun.
They are. Use them more. People level up and they get really bored and tired. Like, we've been level 9 for forever.
But then
just level up.
Be worried, because you might go, this is a fun magic item to give my players. Yeah. And then, oh God, I did not think about them using it in this way.
Do you want
absolutely breaks everything.
I'll tell you a story.
I'd love to.
You've probably heard this. I think I may have said it on the podcast. But at some point, I made a ring at level 1 or 2 for my players. One of the really strong NPCs had it. And some, the NPC's kind of a pushover, at least in negotiations. One of the players, more strong-willed one, gets the ring. It's like, can I see it? And the NPC's like, can I have it back? They're like, no. So another player just has this ring, and what it does is periodically, at a set determined time that they don't even know really, anything can happen out of
it's wild surges.
It opens a portal to anywhere, depending on what I roll behind the scenes at the certain time. For example, they were fighting a freaking basilisk, and it opens something to a giant sunball that eventually ends up about to explode the entire area. So it only happens if they wear it. So it's almost like Lord of the Rings, because I know they love that. So this player will get behind shit and put the ring on and just say, okay, I wait. I'm like, I hate you so much. So this is an extremely powerful ring I'm going to weave into the story, as I already have, and you guys will find out eventually.
Yeah, make it some some evil enemies out there looking for this.
Yeah, so we'll see.
Well, you bring up a good point where it's important to keep in mind you should give, let's say there's a basic bandit, give them a magic item, make them a little more interesting, and remember that you should definitely allow the players to then kill the enemy and take their item. Don't just allow it to be an ability. Or if you find an ability for some other creature that you really like, turn that into a magical item, give it to some other guy, he's using it, and then the players can kill this guy and take it.
Yeah. Magic items are how you keep your players interested when you haven't leveled up in ages, because it's essentially getting a new spell, it's getting a new skill. It buffs their character.
And you can steal something from me, which I slightly stole from multiple other sources.
We steal from everybody.
Yeah, slightly from Critical Role and very much so from Dark Souls. Is whenever they get a magical item, there's a brief description, historically wise, of what this item is. It just places it into the world a little bit cooler and gives them some background history on stuff that they may or may not care about. They might now. I don't know. You don't have to, of course, but just play some Dark Souls, read those beautiful descriptions, and then spice them into your own magical items.
It Christmas.
It is Christmas.
It Christmas.
It Christmas.
Something, the other answer that I've come up with for the fighters is give them more flexibility, and everybody with interacting with physical parts of people. So your fighter has a big sword, and maybe they say they want to hit this guy non-lethally. But you say, where are you aiming at? They go, the head. And I go, okay. And they roll like a 20. So they get a crit, and they roll a booty ton of damage. Yeah. You can make combat for them really unpredictable and have side effects. So I'm just like, you were going for non-lethal, but you just chop their head off because you're so strong and awesome. Or say they're aiming for the arm, and they don't say it for any particular reason, and they roll that same high damage die. Have them lop the arm off. Let them debilitate the other person. I'm sure in other things there may be mechanics for this, but at least in 5e there's nothing specific. So have fun with it.
Yeah, I believe, and people can correct me if I'm wrong, that there is in 4th edition, I'm going to check it real fast, yes. There is a feature or condition, called Bloodied. And this was typically around when you were about half hit points or less. And there were creatures that had various abilities that would trigger once they are bloodied. So once they are hurt, they are now in critical damage, and they decide, okay, now I'm going to start using these other abilities. They're a little stronger, a little more trying to defend myself.
Dark Souls, multiple health bars. Exactly,
yeah. But something that you could take from what Braxton said, besides just the blooding mechanic, is something like, if they're attacking the head or attacking the eyes for some certain creatures, maybe they're blinded for a turn, blinded for a round until they do. Or you hit the arm so hard, or you focus on that the damage might be less depending on what the DM says, the damage might be less, but now their next attack is with disadvantage or something. Give it some tangible benefit.
Yeah, and that will help your players end up describing what they're doing on their turns more if you reward them that way. That's another way to make combat a lot more fun. It's hard to say, okay, you guys need to yell out anime titles for your attacks every time you hit. Maybe not, basically, like freaking Black Clover, every time they do a spell, they have to say it. Which maybe it helps with the casting. Sometimes there's verbal and semantic parts.
If someone did that to me, counterspell. You doing lightning bolt? Counterspell. All right. Thanks for telling me.
Some spells have verbal components. And
thanks for letting me know.
Let me know stuff. You okay there?
Counterspell.
Don't do counterspell. That's the last. That's the. If you take anything from this podcast today, don't use counterspell unless your players can use counterspell.
Yeah, and even still, don't just use it all the time.
Yeah. If
they got 4 spell slots, don't use them for every single counterspell. But spice it up. Maybe use if the enemy is like, all right, I want to make sure I stay in the spot, or I'm planning this really cool ability. Maybe have them use counterspell then, but not for every spell.
That would be kind of telegraphed. Now, if you're like Kenneth, I know he's listening right now, and he's like, homie, that's just, they got counterspell. Do it. There's nothing wrong with it. Just make sure your players had the tools to see it coming. Yeah. I can see him now. He's listening. He goes, homie, they got counterspell. I get it, okay? But Kenneth is also a dick to his players.
Well, I think at the end of the day, it's important. It is all about having fun, and I have seen the disappointment on my players' face when they're so excited to cast a spell.
Warlock counterspell, biggest.
Well, not you. That would be sad for you. Yeah, but it was a specific player, and he cast the spell, and this was after him sitting there, like we said in the beginning of the podcast, sitting there waiting for everyone to finish their turn, taking forever, and he misses, a certain spell. He's like, okay, gotta sit here again. And then his action rolls around and he casts a spell, and I said counterspelled. He got the wizard said, haha, not today, whatever. And counterspelled, and I just saw him just absolutely deflate. He's like, I could basically hear inside his head say, what's the point? Why am I even trying to bother anymore?
And it's so sad too, because this person, like, from my point of view, he's got a lot of patience, and he's a very, very calm and collected person.
So seeing that makes me hesitate to ever really use counterspell, and only in certain scenarios is when I would.
Yeah. So to summarize, watch your players, give them the tools, give the monsters the tools, and teach them how to play the game through the game.
Use different goals, different ways, different win conditions for the combat.
Yeah. Terrain, movement. You have a lot of things that you can do. And if your players don't know about it, like I just said a second ago, rather than sit them down and say, hey, you've got this, this, and that, have a monster abuse it, encompass it. Let it be the theme of using all its movement every turn. Let it be climbing all over the walls. Use cool monsters, combine them. A lot of these things have crossovers. A lot of things can create goals for your players, but I know I get bored of D&D combat a lot of the time. Yeah. Because I'm a warlock and I'm always trying to not cast my spells, but there's a lot of other things that I can do. So yeah, combat.
That's combat in a nutshell.
Yeah. We had one conversation about it forever ago, and it was so good.
Yeah,
and here we finally did it. So hopefully
lasted hours. I feel like
it was like 2 or 3 hours. It was late at night. It was about a year ago, probably, or so.
Yeah.
So hopefully this lived up to expectation. We've talked about it in probably every single episode.
Was that before we started the podcast or after?
This was after we'd started the podcast. Okay. Like
I remember us lamenting that we hadn't recorded it.
Yeah. Yeah, it was rough.
Hopefully we lived up to the expectations.
I feel satisfied.
Yeah,
I think I said what I wanted to say.
Okay.
I talked about the 2 games. I'm no longer like rose-colored glasses for Fire Emblem 3 Houses because I haven't played it in a while.
Yeah, I need to get back to it as well.
Yeah. So, I mean, unless there's anything else that good old Ryan here wanted to toss into the hat in regards to combat, we'll probably, I think we're going to do a part 2? Where we dive into other things like tabletop RPGs, other versions of
at least a little bit. Yeah, there are other editions. For example, like I said, 4E, for what it's worth, a lot of people kind of tend to hate on 4E, did combat very well.
So numbers, though, yeah?
We could talk about that. Yeah, a lot of numbers.
It'll be a lot of research. You guys better support us. And you want to know how?
How?
You can do that. You can follow us or add us on Twitter and Instagram at Dungeon Crawl Pod.
Sick.
Or you can shoot us an email at thedungeoncrawlpod@gmail.com. Tell us about, what you do during combat to make it more fun, or an issue that you had, or maybe we didn't even talk about your problem that you're living through right now. Maybe you got a giant llama that's on your back right now in combat and you can't get rid of it. Let me tell you how to do that. That
sounds unfortunate.
It's very unfortunate. But you can do those 3 things.
Rate us 5 stars on iTunes if you feel so inclined. That helps us out a lot.
I did that the other day.
It's a wonderful, wonderful way to support the cast.
Hell yeah. His name's Ryan sometimes.
Yeah, that's Braxton, I think, majority of the time?
All the time. Every time.
The more you know.
Never not. Especially in
Dungeon
combat.
Crawl.
I scream my name. We are the Dungeon Crawl.
We are the Dungeon Crawl.
Take care, everybody.
Thanks for listening, you silly fools.